Don't you dare step on my garden again, I told you. This path is off limit.
My little girl's scream cut through the quiet morning like a knife. I ran outside and couldn't believe what I was seeing. The HOA president had her hands wrapped around my 12-year-old daughter's crutch, yanking it hard, threatening to make her fall to the ground. This woman had absolutely no idea that she'd just put her hands on a SWAT officer's child. That was the biggest mistake of her life. And I saw everything. Before we get into this unbelievable story, I want to ask you something. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And if you haven't already, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel, because we bring you real, powerful stories like this one every single week. Merry Christmas to all of you. By the way, this time of year is all about family, kindness, and protecting the ones we love, which is exactly what this story is about. The morning sun was starting to peek over the horizon when I heard that scream. I was upstairs in my home office on the second floor, going through tactical reports from the night before. We'd had an operation the previous evening, and I was doing my usual follow-up paperwork. My daughter, Emma Shea, is 12 years old and was recovering from ACL surgery. At the time had insisted on going outside that morning to water her small garden by the front porch. She'd been so incredibly proud of those flowers. Even though she was on crutches and could barely get around, she'd been tending to that garden carefully every single day. But that scream I heard, that wasn't just a normal yell. That was pure, absolute terror in my child's voice. I dropped everything instantly. My training kicked in without me even thinking about it. When you work in SWAT, you learn that seconds can mean the difference between life and death. You learn to move fast and assess situations even faster. I cleared those stairs in 4 jumps and burst through the front door like it wasn't even there. What I saw when I got outside made my blood turn to ice in my veins. A woman who looked to be in her mid-50s, dressed in an expensive beige pantsuit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, had both of her hands wrapped tightly around Emma's left crutch. She was yanking on it hard, really putting her weight into it, trying to rip it away from my daughter. Emma was holding on desperately, her small hands gripping that crutch for dear life. Her face was twisted up in fear and pain. Her injured leg couldn't support her weight at all. The doctor had been very clear about that. She was tilting dangerously to one side, about to crash to the ground. "Let go of my daughter," I roared, sprinting across the lawn as fast as I could move. The woman looked up at me, startled by my sudden appearance. But here's what struck me: she wasn't scared, not even a little bit. She had this look of complete confidence on her face, like she was used to getting her way and had never faced any real consequences for anything in her entire life. "Your daughter is violating HOA regulations," she snapped at me, not even loosening her grip on Emma's crutch. "These garden decorations are not approved according to our community guidelines, and I'm confiscating this crutch until you comply with the rules." I reached them in seconds flat. I gently supported Emma with one arm, making sure she was stable, while fixing this woman with a stare that I usually reserve for armed suspects. It's a look that's made grown men surrender without a fight. "Step back now." My voice was quiet, controlled, but absolutely deadly serious. She didn't move fast enough for my liking. I positioned myself directly between her and Emma, my body language making it crystal clear what would happen if she tried to touch my daughter again. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" My voice was even quieter now, that kind of calm that's actually more frightening than yelling. "You just assaulted a child who's recovering from major surgery. You tried to take away a medical device from a disabled minor. Do you understand the severity of what just happened here?" The woman's face flushed bright red, but it wasn't from embarrassment or shame, it was from anger. "I'm Karen Henderson," she announced, like her name should mean something to me. "I'm the president of the Meadowbrook HOA. Your daughter's little garden project violates Section 7, Paragraph 3 of our community guidelines. All exterior decorations require written approval from the board, and those," she pointed with a perfectly manicured finger at Emma's carefully painted garden gnomes, and small flower bed are completely unauthorized. Emma was shaking against my side, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her knuckles had turned white from gripping her remaining crutch so hard. I could already see red marks forming on her hands and arms where this woman had grabbed her. "Emma, sweetheart, I need you to go inside," I said softly, keeping my eyes locked on Karen. "Call Mom at work and tell her exactly what happened out here, okay?" "But Dad, my flowers." Her voice was small and scared. "I'll handle everything, baby, I promise. Just go on inside, where it's safe." She hobbled toward the house as fast as she could on one crutch, looking back over her shoulder with those wide, frightened eyes that broke my heart into pieces. The moment Emma was safely inside with the door closed behind her, I turned my complete and undivided attention back to Karen Henderson. "Now stay with me here, because what I'm about to tell you is going to show you exactly how one person's abuse of power can destroy lives and what happens when they pick the wrong family to target. This gets intense. Let me explain something to you," I said, pulling my phone out of my pocket and opening the camera app. "My name is Officer Jake Martinez. I'm a SWAT team leader with the Metropolitan Police Department. What you just did out here is called assault and battery on a minor. It's also an attempted theft of medical equipment, and depending on how the district attorney's office decides to see this situation, it could be charged as endangering the welfare of a child." I hit the record button and started documenting everything: her face, her expensive clothes, the scene around us, all of it. Karen's confident expression finally showed its first real crack. "You can't just time simply enforcing community standards. That's my job as HOA president. You put your hands on a child," I said, my voice steady and clear for the recording. "You tried to take away her mobility aid, her crutch that she needs to walk. There's a very big difference between enforcing neighborhood rules and physically assaulting a 12-year-old girl who just had major knee surgery 2 weeks ago." I kept my phone steady, making sure I was documenting every word of this conversation. "I'm giving you exactly one chance to walk away right now," I continued. "Leave my property. Don't come back here. Please don't contact me or anyone in my family. If you do any of those things, I will press full criminal charges against you. Do you understand me?" Her mouth opened and closed a few times, like a fish out of water. Then I watched as the arrogance came flooding back into her expression. "You're threatening an HOA board member," she said, her voice rising. "I'll have your house fined into foreclosed. I'll make your life here absolutely miserable. You have no idea what kind of power I have in this community." I smiled, but there wasn't an ounce of warmth in it. "Please try it. I'm actually begging you to try it." She turned on her expensive designer heels and marched back toward her black Mercedes parked at the curb. But as she drove away, I could see her on her phone, already calling someone. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Inside the house, I found Emma curled up on the couch, still crying, with my wife Rachel on speakerphone. "Jake, what in God's name happened out there?" Rachel's voice was tight with that controlled panic that only parents understand. Emma's trying to explain, but she's so upset. I explained the entire situation while carefully checking Emma over for any injuries. She had red marks on both hands and her arms. Some bruising would probably show up by tomorrow morning, but the worst damage wasn't physical, it was the absolute terror I could still see in my daughter's eyes. "She just grabbed me out of nowhere, Dad," Emma whispered, her voice shaking. "I was watering my sunflowers, minding my own business, and she started yelling at me about rules and regulations. Then she just grabbed my crutch and started pulling as hard as she could. I almost fell. If you hadn't come outside when you did." A wave of rage burned through my chest, hot and fierce, but I kept my voice gentle when I spoke to her. "You're safe now, sweetheart. She will never, ever touch you again. I promise you that. But what about my garden?" Her voice was so small and sad. "Your garden is going to be fine," I said, squeezing her hand. "Better than fine, actually. Just trust me on this, okay?" Rachel was already on her way home from work. "Jake, we're pressing charges. I don't care what it takes or how much it costs. Already planning on it," I assured her. "But first, I need some information." I called my buddy Derek, who worked in the city planning office. We'd gone through the police academy together years ago. "Derek, I need you to send me the complete HOA agreement for Meadowbrook Estates. Everything you've got on file." "That's kind of a weird request, man," Derek said, sounding confused. "You doing okay?" "The HOA president just physically assaulted Emma," I said flatly. "I'm going to war, and I need ammunition." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Oh, hell no. Sending it right now, Jake. Those HOA contracts can be absolutely nasty, and some of these board presidents think they're running their own little kingdoms. You sure you want this fight?" She put her hands on my daughter and tried to take her crutch away while she's recovering from surgery, I said. "So yeah, I'm very sure. Say no more, brother. Check your email in about 2 minutes." While Emma rested on the couch with an ice pack on her arms, I dove deep into the documentation Derek had sent me. The HOA agreement was 89 pages of dense legal text that would make most people's eyes glaze over. But I'd read far more complex tactical manuals during my career. I had the time, and more importantly, I had the motivation. What I'm about to discover in these HOA documents is absolutely shocking. This woman had been terrorizing families for years, and nobody had stood up to her until now. Keep watching, justice is coming. 3 hours later, Rachel came home and immediately wrapped Emma in her arms while I made phone calls. First to our family lawyer, then to the police non-emergency line to file a formal report. Then I started digging into Karen Henderson's history as HOA president. What I found was absolutely disturbing and made my blood boil. Karen had been the HOA president for 8 solid years. During that time, the community had filed 47 formal complaints against her for various forms of harassment. 47, let that sink in for a moment. 17 different families had moved out of Meadowbrook Estates, specifically because of her behavior. I found their testimonials online, on neighborhood forums, and in city records. Story after story of harassment, intimidation, and abuse of power. She'd been sued twice for overstepping her authority and abusing her position. But both cases had been settled quietly, with non-disclosure agreements. The HOA's insurance company had paid out both settlements to make the problems go away. But here's what really got me: she had a clear pattern. She would specifically target families with young children or elderly residents. People she thought were vulnerable. People she thought wouldn't fight back. She'd find minor violations: grass half an inch too tall, a mailbox the wrong shade of color, garden decorations not pre-approved. Then she'd escalate those minor issues relentlessly until the families either complied completely with her every demand or just gave up and moved away. But she'd never targeted a police officer's family before. That was her biggest mistake. That evening, I received an email from the HOA's attorney. It was professionally worded, using all the right legal language, but the threat underneath was crystal clear. Remove all garden decorations by tomorrow at 5 p.m. or face an immediate $500 fine. Every single day of non-compliance after that would add another $500 to the total. They cited multiple sections of the community guidelines to justify their demands. I smiled as I read that email. Then I opened up a blank document and started typing my response. The next morning, I was up before dawn. Emma's garden was about to get a major upgrade. I went to the local nursery as soon as they opened and bought everything that was technically allowed under the HOA guidelines. I'd spent half the night reading every single page of those regulations, and I knew exactly what I could and couldn't do. Native flowers that were specifically listed as approved species. Regulations planters that matched the exact dimensions in the guidelines. Approved garden borders made from the pre-approved materials list. I documented absolutely everything with timestamps and photographs. Then I filed my own formal complaint with the HOA board. 23 pages detailing Karen Henderson's assault on Emma. I included my video evidence, photographs of Emma's injuries with timestamps, and a detailed statement from our orthopedic surgeon about the potential serious harm that could result from pulling someone off their crutches during ACL recovery. But I didn't stop there. I also filed formal complaints with the county, citing 12 specific HOA violations of county ordinances that I'd discovered during my research. Karen had been cutting corners left and right, approving construction projects without proper permits, misappropriating community funds for what looked like personal expenses, using HOA money to pay for things that had nothing to do with community management. By noon, I had delivered copies of my complaint to every single house in the neighborhood. I didn't include all the personal details about what she'd done to Emma. That felt too private, and I kept that part brief. But I did include all the evidence of HOA mismanagement, financial irregularities, and corruption that I'd uncovered. Karen showed up at my front door at exactly 2 p.m., flanked by 2 other board members who looked extremely uncomfortable. "You can't just distribute lies and slander about the HOA," she hissed at me, her face red with anger. "I'll sue you for defamation. I'll take everything you have." I stood in my doorway with my arms crossed, completely calm. "Everything I distributed to the neighborhood is documented, verifiable fact. Feel free to sue me. Discovery in that lawsuit will be very, very interesting for everyone involved." One of the other board members, a nervous-looking man named Gerald, cleared his throat awkwardly. "Mr. Martinez, perhaps we can reach some compromise here. This has all gotten out of hand." "No compromise," I said flatly. "Your president physically assaulted my 12-year-old daughter, who's recovering from surgery. That's not something you compromise on." Karen's face had gone from red to almost purple. "It wasn't assault. I was trying to get her attention about the violations." "You grabbed her crutch and tried to pull it away from her," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "I have clear video evidence of exactly what you did. My daughter has bruises on her arms and hands. Pick your defense very carefully, because I'm recording this entire conversation too." The third board member, a woman named Susan, looked absolutely horrified. "Karen, you didn't tell us that you actually touched the child. You said you just spoke to her about the garden, so she was enforcing community standards by assaulting a disabled minor," I said, letting that statement hang in the air between us. "Is that the official position of this HOA board?" Susan and Gerald both looked like they wanted to disappear into the ground. "Susan, Gerald, you both seem like reasonable people," I continued. "I strongly suggest you call an emergency board meeting as soon as possible, because if Karen Henderson is still serving as president by the end of this week, I'm expanding my complaint to include the entire board for failing to act on documented child abuse." They left quickly. I could hear them arguing with each other before they even reached their cars. The neighbors are about to start coming forward with their own stories, and what they reveal is going to shock you. This woman's reign of terror is finally coming to an end. Stay right here. That same evening, my doorbell rang again. It was Mrs. Chen from 2 houses down, holding a warm casserole dish. "This is for your family," she said quietly, her eyes already filling with tears. "My grandson has cerebral palsy. Last year, Karen tried to fine us $10,000 because his wheelchair ramp wasn't aesthetically pleasing. She said it violated community standards and ruined the neighborhood's appearance." Her voice broke. "Thank you for standing up to her." Someone finally dared to fight back. Over the next 2 days, more and more neighbors came forward. Each one had their own story. Each one had been bullied, threatened, or harassed by Karen Henderson in some way. An elderly veteran had been fined repeatedly because his oxygen tank was visible from the street. A young mother had been threatened with legal action because her toddler's toys were left in the front yard for 20 minutes. A family with an autistic child had been harassed for months because their son liked to line up rocks in the driveway as part of his routine. Together, All of us started building a case that went far beyond just one incident with Emma. Meanwhile, I'd tipped off the county inspector about the permit violations and financial irregularities I'd discovered. They showed up at the HOA office for a surprise inspection. Karen had been approving major construction projects without obtaining proper permits from the county. She'd been pocketing consulting fees for herself every time she approved a project. The paper trail was all there once someone actually looked for it. On Wednesday afternoon, I got a call from a detective in the juvenile division. "Mr. Martinez, this is Detective Sarah Williams. We've reviewed your complaint and the video evidence you submitted. We're opening a formal criminal investigation into Mrs. Henderson's assault on your daughter." "Thank you, Detective. I appreciate you taking this seriously." Off the record, her voice softened. "I've got 3 kids of my own. What that woman did to your daughter makes me absolutely sick. We're going to handle this properly and make sure it doesn't get swept under the rug." Thursday morning, the HOA's attorney called me directly instead of sending another email. "Mr. Martinez, my client would like to extend a sincere apology for what happened." "No," I said. "Excuse me. Your client physically assaulted my daughter," I said. "A simple apology doesn't even begin to cut it. Here's what's going to happen next. Karen Henderson resigns from the HOA board immediately and permanently. She issues a written apology to my daughter that fully admits what she did wrong. The HOA drops all fines and violations against our property and against every other family she's targeted over the years. And you retain independent auditors to review the last 8 years of HOA finances with a fine-tooth comb." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "That's quite an extensive list of demands, Mr. Martinez." "Those aren't demands," I corrected him. "Those are my terms for not pursuing criminal charges to the absolute fullest extent of the law. Not filing a civil lawsuit for assault and intentional infliction of emotional distress, and not providing all my evidence to the IRS regarding those very suspicious consulting fees your client has been collecting. Your call, counselor. I'll need to discuss this with my client. You do that? You've got 24 hours. Friday afternoon, there was an emergency HOA meeting that had been called by the other board members. Rachel and I attended together, leaving Emma with Rachel's parents for the evening. The community center was absolutely packed. Every family that Karen had ever targeted showed up, every neighbor who'd witnessed their behavior over the years. The room was buzzing with angry conversations. The room fell completely silent as Susan, now serving as the acting board president, stood up to read a prepared statement. After careful review of recent events and additional information that has come to light over the past week, Karen Henderson has resigned from her position as HOA president, effective immediately. The board has voted unanimously to retain independent auditors to review our finances and management practices going back 8 years. Additionally, all pending fines and violations that were issued in the past 6 months are under review and may be reversed. After proper examination, there was scattered applause from around the room. I stood up from my seat. "I appreciate the board taking action, but I need to say something. This isn't just about policy disputes or HOA regulations. What happened to my daughter wasn't a disagreement about rules. It was an assault. Karen Henderson physically attacked a child. She tried to take away her medical equipment. She caused my daughter both physical and emotional harm. That requires more than just resignation from a volunteer position." Karen suddenly stood up in the back of the room, her face twisted with fury. "You've ruined me," she screamed at me. "You've turned the entire neighborhood against me over some stupid flowers and a brat who..." The room absolutely erupted. People shouted. Several neighbors stood up. Gerald had to bang a gavel repeatedly to restore order. "Mrs. Henderson, you need to leave this meeting immediately," Susan said firmly. "Right now." 2 security guards who had been hired for the meeting escorted Karen out while she screamed threats at me, at the board, at anyone who would listen. It was ugly and uncomfortable, but it was also necessary. After the meeting finally ended, families came up to Rachel and me to thank us. Mrs. Chen hugged Rachel and cried on her shoulder. A young couple told us they'd been planning to sell their house and move because of Karen's constant harassment, but now they wanted to stay and rebuild the community. But the real victory, the real justice came about 2 weeks later. The county investigation is about to reveal something that nobody saw coming. What they find is going to send Karen Henderson to jail. This is where everything comes together. The county investigation revealed that Karen had embezzled over $90,000 from HOA funds over 6 years. She'd been writing checks to herself, creating fake invoices, and pocketing money that was supposed to go toward community maintenance and improvements. The permit violations resulted in massive fines against the HOA that she was personally responsible for paying, and the detective's investigation led to multiple criminal charges being filed: assault on a minor, attempted theft of medical equipment, reckless endangerment of a child, and now embezzlement and fraud. Karen Henderson took a plea deal rather than go to trial. 6 months in county jail, 3 years of probation after her release, 200 hours of community service, restitution payments to the HOA for the money she'd stolen, and a permanent restraining order keeping her at least 500 feet away from me, Rachel, and Emma at all times. But more important than Karen's punishment was what happened to our community. The HOA underwent complete restructuring. New board members were elected in a special election, people who actually cared about the community instead of power and control. New policies were implemented to prevent any one person from gaining too much authority. They hired a professional management company to handle day-to-day operations and provide oversight. Emma's garden flourished beautifully. She added more flowers of different colors. She painted more garden gnomes with different designs. She even started a small vegetable patch with tomatoes and cucumbers. Neighbors would stop by to compliment her on her work. Kids from up and down the street came to help her weed and water, turning it into a little community project. One Saturday morning, about 3 months after the incident, Emma and I were working in her garden together. She was finally off her crutches, her leg healing wonderfully, though she still had physical therapy appointments twice a week. "Dad," she said, carefully patting soil around a new rosebush we were planting, "do you think Mrs. Henderson will ever say she's sorry? Like really mean it?" I thought about that question for a moment while I helped her with the plant. "Maybe," I said honestly. "Sometimes people realize their mistakes when they finally face real consequences for their actions. But you know what, sweetheart? Whether she does or not doesn't really matter in the end. It doesn't. No. What matters is that you're safe now. That you kept doing what you love, despite someone trying to stop you. That you're strong and brave and you didn't let fear win." I ruffled her hair gently. "Your garden is beautiful because you made it with your own hands and your own love, not because someone in authority gave you permission." She smiled, that gap-toothed grin that made everything worthwhile. "I'm glad you saw what she did to me," Emma said quietly. "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." That evening, the new HOA president, a retired teacher named Mr. Rodriguez, stopped by our house with an official-looking certificate in his hand. "The board voted unanimously on this," he said, presenting it to Emma with a warm smile. "This is the Meadowbrook Community Spirit Award. Your garden has brought genuine joy to this neighborhood and inspired so many others to beautify their own properties." Emma's eyes went wide with shock and delight. "Really? This is real." "Absolutely real," Mr. Rodriguez assured her. "Keep up the wonderful work, young lady." After he left, Emma hugged that certificate to her chest like it was made of gold. "Dad, this is the best thing ever," she said, beaming. Rachel wrapped her arms around both of us. "You taught her something really important," she said to me softly. But Emma shook her head. "Dad didn't just teach me, he showed me. There's a difference." She was absolutely right about that. And in that moment, I realized that the incident with Karen Henderson, as traumatic as it had been for all of us, had taught us something incredibly valuable. Standing up to bullies matters. Protecting vulnerable people matters. And sometimes the biggest, Most important battles are fought right in our own neighborhoods, over small gardens and simple acts of human kindness. 6 months after everything happened, I ran into Karen Henderson at the courthouse completely by chance. I was there for an unrelated case, and she was finishing up some of her court-mandated community service hours. She looked different, smaller somehow, like she'd shrunk. When she spotted me, she started to turn away quickly. "Mrs. Henderson," I called out. She stopped walking, her shoulders tense and rigid. "How are you doing?" I asked. She turned around slowly, suspicion written all over her face. "Why do you care?" "Because, believe it or not, I don't take any pleasure in what happened to you," I said honestly. "I just wanted my daughter to be safe. That's all I ever wanted." She was quiet for a long moment, studying my face like she was trying to figure out if I was being sincere. "How is she?" Karen asked quietly. "Your daughter? She's doing great. Her leg healed up completely. Her garden actually won a neighborhood award." Something flickered across Karen's face. Regret, maybe, or shame. "I'm glad to hear that. I didn't mean to hurt her. I just wanted, ... double quotes. She trailed off, shaking her head. "I wanted control over something, anything. My husband left me 5 years ago. My adult children don't talk to me anymore. The HOA was the only place where I felt like I mattered, like I had any purpose." "That doesn't excuse what you did," I said gently, but firmly. I know that now." She looked down at her hands. "I'm in therapy. It's court-mandated, but it's actually helping me. I'm starting to see how toxic I'd become, how much damage I caused to people who didn't deserve it." "That's good," I said. "Growth is always good, no matter when it happens." She looked up at me, genuinely surprised. "You're not what I expected. A SWAT team leader. I thought you'd be more aggressive, more violent in how you dealt with me." I smiled slightly. The job taught me that real strength isn't about domination or violence. It's about protection. It's about knowing when to fight and when to show mercy. When to be hard and when to be understanding. "I don't deserve your mercy or understanding," she said, her voice breaking a little. "Maybe you don't," I agreed. "But my daughter deserves to grow up in a world where people can change for the better, where mistakes don't define us forever, where there's always hope for redemption." I paused. "She asked me once if you would ever apologize to her. If you ever want to write her a letter, it would have to go through her therapist. Not directly to her. I think it might help both of you heal." Karen's eyes filled with tears. "I will. I promise, I will. Thank you for even giving me that chance." I nodded and walked away. I didn't know if she'd actually write that letter, and whether she did or didn't wasn't the point. Emma was healing. Our neighborhood was healthier and stronger. Justice had been properly served. But giving Karen a chance at redemption, that was the real lesson I wanted Emma to learn. Not that bullies should go unpunished. They absolutely should. But that even people who do terrible things can change if they face real consequences and choose to grow from them. 2 months later, a letter arrived in our mailbox. It was addressed to Emma, in care of her therapist, exactly as I'd suggested. In that letter, Karen took full responsibility for everything she'd done. She didn't make excuses. She didn't try to justify her behavior. She didn't ask for forgiveness that she knew she didn't deserve. She acknowledged the harm she'd caused and expressed what seemed like genuine, heartfelt remorse. Emma read the letter with her therapist during one of their regular sessions, then brought it home to show Rachel and me. "She sounds really sad," Emma observed, her voice thoughtful. "She probably is sad," Rachel replied gently. "What she did cost her a tremendous amount. Her freedom, her reputation, her position, her relationships. Do you think she'll be okay eventually?" Emma asked. I knelt to Emma's level and looked her in the eye. "I think that's completely up to her, sweetheart. But the fact that she took the time to write this letter, to take responsibility, that's actually a really good sign. It means she's trying to become a better person. Should I write back to her?" Emma asked uncertainly. Rachel and I exchanged a long look. Only if you want to, I said carefully. And only if your therapist thinks it would be healthy for you. You don't owe her anything, Emma. Not one single thing. Emma thought about it for a long time. Several days, actually. Eventually, she decided to write a short response. In it, she said that she accepted the apology and hoped that Mrs. Henderson would continue working on herself and become a better person. It was mature and gracious beyond her years. But that was Emma always trying to see the best in people, even those who had hurt her badly. 1 year after the incident, our neighborhood held its first annual garden party and community celebration. It was actually Emma's idea. She wanted to celebrate everyone's gardens and create a community event that brought people together instead of tearing them apart. The party was a massive success that exceeded everyone's expectations. Families brought dishes to share everything from homemade pies to ethnic foods representing dozens of different cultures. Kids ran through sprinklers on the community lawn. People who'd barely spoken to each other before the incident became genuine friends. Emma's garden was featured as the centerpiece of the celebration. She gave tours to anyone interested, explaining her plant choices with enthusiasm, sharing gardening tips she'd learned from books and YouTube videos, and talking about the therapeutic value of working with growing things. Mr. Rodriguez gave a heartfelt speech that had many people in tears. One young girl's courage in the face of bullying and abuse transformed our entire neighborhood, he said, his voice full of emotion. She showed all of us that beauty and kindness are so much stronger than arbitrary rules and fear. She reminded us what community is supposed to mean. Standing there watching Emma laugh with her friends, her leg fully healed, her confidence completely restored, I felt the last knot of anger in my chest finally loosen and disappear. Justice had been served properly. A bully had faced real consequences. A community had healed and grown stronger. And my daughter had learned that standing up for what's right, even when it's frightening, is always worth the fight. That night, as I tucked Emma into bed, she looked up at me with those wise, thoughtful eyes. Dad, do you think Mrs. Henderson is happy now? I don't know, sweetheart. I hope she's working on it. Me too, Emma said seriously. Because being angry and mean all the time must be really, really hard and lonely. I kissed her forehead. You're a good person, Emma Martinez. Don't ever change who you are. I won't. But Dad. Yes, baby. If someone ever tries to take my crutches again, I'm totally going to use them to hit them in the shins. I laughed, genuinely, deeply laughed, for the first time in months. That's my girl. But let's hope it never comes to that, okay? Deal. She agreed with a grin. As I turned off her light and quietly closed her door, I thought about how strange and unpredictable life can be. A simple garden had become a battleground. A moment of cruelty had sparked a revolution in our community. And a 12-year-old girl with painted gnomes and sunflowers had taught an entire neighborhood about courage, forgiveness, and the importance of standing up for what's right. I walked downstairs to find Rachel on the couch, scrolling through photos from the garden party on her phone.